I'm so scared.
What if the person in your mirror is trying to get the timing right because they are not a reflection at all? What if the glass is a mouth and every breath on it spells a name the world will not say out loud? Some stories are too disturbing to be true, but what if they are waiting for you to look straight at them? Welcome back to my channel, Whispering Abyss. Tonight, I have something truly haunting for you. 5 mirror stories that sound like confessions whisper at 3 in the morning. From polite tapping inside bathroom glass to elevators that keep a 13th floor and no one rides it twice, every tale here is a little mystery that opens into a bigger one. Listen close. Keep a light on, and tell me in the comments which moment made you look at your own reflection differently. If you have ever seen the glass breathe, you already know why we are here. Story 1. The Silver Veil in Apartment 3B. I noticed a mirror before I noticed a smell. The silvering along the bottom looked like frost trapped under skin, and when I leaned close it breathed on me, fogging my name backward in a shiver I could not explain. I should have covered it and called someone, but I was the someone now. The building hired me on trial as a caretaker. If I passed inspection, I kept the keys and a rent break. If I failed, I went back to sleeping on people's couches and pretending I liked it. That is how this begins, with breath on a mirror and a job I could not afford to lose. The building called itself historic, which meant thin walls, a radiator that clicked like teeth, and rules written in a typewriter's tired cough. My unit 3B came with a list taped behind the vanity light. Do not remove original fixtures. Do not replace the bathroom mirror. Do not, under any circumstances, scrape silvering. Someone underlined that last line 3 times in faded pencil. The ammonia sting under the bulb made my eyes water. In the glass, the hall door behind me looked open even though I had locked it. The door kept standing open in the reflection, and that was the first thing that did not make sense. I told myself it was a trick of angles. Old glass warps. Doors looked different. But at 2:03 that night, the intercom buzzer drilled through sleep, and I sat up with my heart hammering like I had already been running. The building's intercom is not connected to any phone, yet my phone vibrated anyway, caller ID reading my own number. I answered because of course I did. A voice like mine whispered through static. Cover the glass, it said, and then it said my name the way I only say it in my head when I am panicking, and the line died with a soft pop. By morning there were dead moths under the bathroom mirror in a neat little crescent. Their wings were wrong, translucent and crisp like thin plastic curled by heat. I picked one up with a tissue, and it made a sound like 2 pieces of tape pulling apart. I flushed them, embarrassed that my hand shook. I had to start a work order list, oil the stair rails, and smile at an inspector who was rumored to be allergic to compassion. I told myself not to think about the moths. I told myself not to think about the smell. Then the smell sharpened, and trying not to think about it became all I could do. That night the floor under the vanity turned slick. When I wiped it, the cloth came back damp but clean. The silvering shivered like water skinned with ice when a fish noses it from below. I raised my hand and counted out loud. 1, 2. My reflection raised hers after 2. The delay was small. Small is not the same as nothing. I tried again. This time my reflection moved first. 2 seconds early. Palm up to the glass like she was touching a window on a train I was not riding yet. I stepped back so hard the towel rack rattled, and the room felt too narrow to choose a direction. At 2:03 the intercom screamed again. I did not answer right away. I stood in the bathroom doorway, watching my phone jump on the sink like it wanted out. Cover the glass. My voice said when I finally picked up, and beneath the words was a thin staccato sound. Tapping. Imagine someone knocking politely from inside the mirror. Not frantic, not threatening, patient. I grabbed a towel and threw over the glass. The tapping stopped like someone had been holding their breath for the chance to quit. I slept until 3:13 when the power dipped, a known quirk of this building. And in that breath of darkness, the towel slid down the glass with the sound of cloth over teeth. In the morning, my neighbor in 3A lingered outside like a shadow with a mug. He is the sort of man who learns when you wake before he learns your name. He asked if I had heard anything at 3:13. He said his sister vanished in the elevator mirror at that exact time. He said the 13th floor was real, even when the buttons lied. He had camera footage, he claimed, proof that glass eats people if it likes them enough. I told him that the elevator was polished metal, not a mirror. He stared at my door number, then looked at my face like he had measured me for a story I did not want to be in. I watched this footage because grief persuades of the kind of honesty fear cannot fake. At 3:13, the hallway lights dipped, yes, but the elevator remained a stainless box with no more personality than a spoon. No faces, no distortions, no sister. He hit pause and jabbed his finger at a blur near my door. Motion sensor noise, he said. She came here that night. I did not invite her. He added that last part with a tremor that did not belong to anger alone. He insisted the elevator was cursed. He needed the curse to be far from the apartment opposite his own. I nodded and told him I would be careful. The way you tell fever it is not hot. Back in 3B, the ammonia scent was stronger near the frame. The lease clause marched through my head like a chant. Do not scrape. The inspector would run a finger along the edge and smile if it looked clean. The rule would cost me. The rule always costs someone. At noon, I took a single-edged razor and leaned close. It was quiet enough to hear the building breathe. The first tick of the blade took nothing. The second made a sticky sound, like skin easing away from tape. The moment I lifted the second curl of silver, the ammonia smell stopped completely, as if a lid had sealed on a jar. The glass darkened. My reflection did not brighten to meet it. Behind my reflected self, the hall door was open to a hallway that matched mine, but slanted wrong, like a copy made on a dull machine. A blanket I do not own lay folded where my bath mat should be. The towel in the other room had a stain on the wrong corner. My reflection did not look up right away, which scared me more than if she had been waiting. All the while, the tapping returned, a patient little rhythm, like someone practicing manners at a locked window. At 2:03, the intercom did not buzz. My phone did. I answered on the first vibration. "Cover it," said the voice that wears my name and the voice I use to calm myself down. Cover it and keep it covered until the next power dip, then cover it again. I asked why she sounded like me. The line softened until I could hear breathing. "Because I am you," she whispered, and for a second the tiny hairs on my arm stood up not from fear but recognition. Then the line popped and the bathroom sighed, and the tapping sped up like someone who had been waiting learned they had been heard. I threw the towel over the mirror. Relief pooled across the tiles, a quiet as complete as an empty theater. Immediate relief is a dangerous teacher. For 20 minutes, I believed in it. Then 3:13 came and the lights dipped and the towel slid as if hands under the glass were smoothing it down. I lunged and caught it before it fell. When I touched the cloth to the surface yielded. A soft dome formed under the towel. The glass was not flat. It was breathing. The dome pressed forward without wrinkling, as if a veil had been inflated by a careful lung. My super answered on the second ring. I told him the mirror was damaged and leaking and it smelled wrong. He told me the mirror was original, and the smell was probably the cleaner, and the inspector was allergic to complaints. I suggested a temporary swap. He said if anything changed, the rent changed, and he defined 5 other caretakers who liked following rules. When people tell you who they are, believe the part that costs you something. I hung up and looked at the crescent of dead moths. Another had appeared, delicate and silver, with a curled edge like a lock of hair pressed between clear tape. I picked one up. It was not a moth. It was a brittle sheath, triangular, with a filament trapped inside, like a hair in laminated plastic. Not mine. Too pale. Too straight. When I set it down, the tapping shifted to a pattern I knew too well. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The count I used last year when a fire alarm trapped me on the landing, and I had to talk myself down through smoke and shame. I never told anyone that. Hearing it from inside the mirror was like being seen through bone. If you have ever been called by your own worst thoughts, you know that tone. I wanted to believe my neighbor's curse. It is easy to fear an elevator you can avoid than a mirror that will follow you as long as you have a face. At 3:08, I stood in the elevator, watching my thin shape fold into brushed steel. Nothing happened. My neighbor hovered by the doors, as if he could catch me if I fell through. At 3:13, the lights dipped and came back with a shrug. The metal never wavered. Upstairs, a motion sensor blinked to life outside my door. He saw it on his phone. I saw resignation loosen his shoulders like someone had opened a fist. The elevator was not the problem. We both already knew that. The problem waited in my bathroom, in a mirror that smelled like it had been preserved for something that did not include me. I touched the seam I had scraped. It flexed. Cold, not tile cold, but ice under skin cold. My finger met something soft that dimpled and pushed back like a blanket stretched tight. The tapping stilled, then resumed in my calming pattern. I whispered into the towel, "If you are me, tell me what I am thinking." The tapping answered with 3 soft taps and a pause and one more. The number I count when I want to be brave. I have never said it out loud where anyone could hear. You might ask why I did not leave. I asked myself that too. The truth is I had 3 days to pass inspection. The job was the first steady thing in a year of side gigs and apologies. The lease clause sang in my head even when I covered my ears. Do not scrape. By breaking it, I had opened something I did not understand. By obeying it, I kept it open. Rules can be a trap and a map at the same time. I set the towel aside to make everything match. I would cover the mirror again, I told myself, as soon as I evened the edge so the inspector would not catch me. You hear the lie rising in my throat, even if I pretended not to. At 2:03, silence. The apartment felt like a held breath. The seam widened like the mouth of a bag. The silver veil pushed forward as if a careful lung were exhaling behind it. My reflection looked up finally. Me, but a year older in the ways stress adds numbers, not candles. Behind her, the hall door stood open on that slanted corridor. The stain on her towel was in the other corner. She lifted a hand and did not wait the 2 seconds. We moved together. Her palm rested against the towel, and the towel bowed out toward me with a careful pressure that knew exactly where my bones lived. I had a choice. Leave it covered until the power dip, like the voice said, or pull the towel away and look directly at what wanted looking at. Choice is a shape in the throat. You feel it click. I pulled the towel. The ammonia smell did not return. The glass did not shine. It deepened, as if light had a longer way to travel now. The polite tapping sounded closer. The seam had become a lip. I pressed the razor to the edge, not to widen it. I told myself, just to make it neat. The sound was not scraping. It was the sound of tape surrendering what it has held too long. At that exact second, the intercom woke. My own voice snarled away, "I only sound when I am about to cry. Cover it, please. Cover it now. I said, tell me who you are. The answer came as breath against my ear that did not belong to the room I stood in. I am you on the other side of the choice you are about to make. If I cover, I keep my job. If I uncover it, I keep my name. Pick. The tapping began to count again. In. Hold. Out. It felt like someone helping me through a panic attack while guiding me to the panic. I widened the seam enough to slip 2 fingers in. The veil was cool and dry and had the give of a membrane you are not supposed to pierce. It stuck to my skin with a static cling. When I pulled my fingers back, threads of bright silver stretched after them like thin sugar pulled to candy. They did not snap. They thinned, and then slid back into the seam as if they were never separate. The mirror wanted contact, not passage. The thought did not comfort me. It wanted equivalence. It wanted the timing right. It wanted the person on my side to match the person on theirs. The elevator red herring tried one more time to save me. My neighbor texted a freeze frame from the building's keycard log. His sister's last ping was outside my door just before 3:13 2 months ago. He sent a second still of the elevator at 3:13, showing his own face reflected cleanly in the steel. He added a single line. If you see her, tell her I said I am sorry. The text landed like a weight I could not carry with both hands. The mirror hummed gently like a throat clearing before a speech. I told myself I would pull back. I told myself I was only checking the integrity of the frame. I went up to the wrist. The veil accepted me like a glove cut from fog. A pressure formed on the inside of my skin, a weightless resistance that made my joints ache. My reflection stepped closer. Her eyes looked the way mine looked after crying. She tapped the glass according to my pattern, and I answered without thinking. Tap, 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 pause. She smiled in relief that arrived 2 seconds early. I felt something wind around my fingers inside the seam of fine hair-like thread. Not hair, the filament from those silver sheaths. I thought of the crescent of knot moths. I thought of how they curled at the edges like cast-off skins. My phone alarm chirped softly at 3:12, a minute to the power dip, a minute before the building shrugged like something heavy just got off its chest. I pulled, but the filament tightened. The polite tapping became a tap code I did not set. It was not my pattern. It was a beckon. Come through, not to the other side, but to the line. Equivalence. Match the timing. Be me until the timing clicks forever. I had a handful of choices, and every one would cost something I still needed. The towel waited on the counter like a small mercy that would not fit over what I had already done. I reached blindly with my other hand and found one of the silver sheaths on the counter. Sharp, brittle. The curl fit against my middle finger like a tiny blade. I do not know how I knew, but I knew the filament was not a rope. It was a tether that gets stronger the more you pull. Some knots cut only when slack. I stopped pulling for one breath and felt the thread slacken. I slipped the sheath under it and lifted. It parted with a sound so soft it only existed for my skin. Something on the other side gasped. Or maybe that was me, hearing what it sounds like when your twin loses her balance in a place with no floor. 3:13 hit. The lights dipped. The towel moved by itself. It did not fall this time. It snapped up as if the air had teeth. The mirror exhaled a long, cool breath that smelled faintly of nothing at all. The ammonia did not come back. I stood shaking with my wrist wet with something that evaporated without a trace. The tapping stopped for the first time since the first night. Do not mistake quiet for safety. I did. For exactly the time it takes to make a bad decision feel like a good story. I rehung the towel with both hands. I taped the edges down with blue painter's tape. I wrote a note for myself that said, Do not remove silvering. I put the razor in the trash. I called the super and told him the mirror was handled and ready for inspection. He sounded pleased that I had solved the problem. Without creating one, he had to add to a budget. I stood in the bathroom listening to silence that weighed as much as a person and decided to sleep in the living room where the mirrors are only the kind you can turn to face a wall. Morning arrived as if nothing had waited for it. The inspector ran his finger along the bottom edge of the glass and smiled the way people do when they see their reflection behaving. He ticked other boxes and congratulated me on a building that smelled historically clean. He did not notice the tape towel. He called it dust protection and told me to keep it on until paint day. I nodded like I had planned that. He handed me a pass. The job was mine. For a little while, the idea of reliable pay made my knees weak. Consequences like to wait until you have something to lose. That night, I slept at 1:50 with my phone face down and the intercom unplugged, which is not how intercoms work, but made me feel brave. At 2:03, nothing buzzed. At 2:07 a.m., single tap came from the bathroom wall, which is not where the mirror is, but sound bends when it wants attention. I stayed in bed. At 2:13, I heard breathing on glass that should have been covered and was, and I told myself it was the building relaxing after heat. You can tell yourself anything if it gets you to sunrise. The part that matters is the part you do not tell anyone at all. 2 days later, I cleaned the streak off the vanity light cover, and the towel breathed out my name from under the tape. Not loud, not a whisper either. My name written backwards, and only for me to hear. Along the baseboard, a new crescent waited. Not moths. Every little silver sheath curled at the edge like the way hair breaks when you try to pull it through a knot. I picked one up, and it caught at my fingerprint as if learning it. I flushed them and told myself that was the end of that. Endings are often just clean places where you put your fear, so you can eat dinner. The neighbor from 3A knocked late, hold his phone like a rosary. He had found one last still from the night his sister disappeared. She was standing at my door at 3:12 holding a towel in both hands. She was crying with the kind of relief people only get when they finally follow a rule that hurt to follow. The timestamp ticked once and the hall went dark. When it brightened again, the towel was gone and the crescent of knot moths began under the door. He asked if he could see my mirror. I told him it was taped for paint. He nodded as if that answer lived next to the truth in a drawer with a broken handle. He left a minute later, and I stood alone with the taped towel and the thin breath coming through the corners like coal from a window you could not seal. I thought about the tether I cut. I thought about how it felt to feel something slacken that had learned me well enough to predict my breath. I thought about a mirror that did not want entry so much as equal timing. There's a reason you count out loud when you are afraid. Rhythm is a ladder. It works both directions. If you have ever tapped on glass to calm a dog during a storm, you know how to begin. I moved the tape, and a little curl of silver slithered out and dropped like a thin snakeskin, then flattened until it looked like a moth. The bathroom smelled like clean air. That was wrong. Air should smell like itself, not like nothing. I pressed the towel back down with my palms and felt a slow exhale push against my hands. Polite, patient, the kind of pressure a nurse uses when they say, "Hold still, this will only take a moment." I whispered through the cloth. I am keeping the job. I am keeping the apartment. I am keeping my name. There was a long pause on the other side, like someone considering a counteroffer. The next morning the heating came on late, and the radiator clicked out a pattern that did not match any song I know. In the mirror over the sink in the kitchen, a film of steam wrote a curve like the top of a letter I would recognize if I let it finish. I wiped it away with the side of my arm. The film returned as if someone on the other side of that mirror had drawn with a steady finger. I kept wiping until the glass squeaked and my arm ached. It felt like bailing a boat with a spoon. The bathroom stayed quiet, as if it did not need to be loud to be real. I still work there. I pass inspection. My name is on the office door in dry erase because we never spring for anything permanent in a building that is older than our plans. I have not scraped the mirror again. I have not removed the towel. At 3:13, the power dips with a shrug. At 2:03, I turn my phone off and pretend that changes anything. Most nights, there is nothing. You could live here for years and never suspect a thing if you are the kind of person who never looks too closely at themselves. You might love it here if the only breath you want to see is yours. Last week, I woke at 2:07 to a sound so small, I thought it was a key turning in a lock 2 floors down. Tap, 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 pause. My pattern, but slower. I lay still and counted my breath. The tapping did not speed up. The towel did not move. In the kitchen, the little sink mirror wrote a letter that looked like the start of my name. I did not wipe it. Sometimes the only power you have is not to participate in timing you did not choose. The letter faded on its own. I waited for a long time and nothing else happened until morning, which might be the worst part. I keep one of the silver sheets in a plastic bag inside the drawer with the old keys. It is brittle and already beginning to curl tighter, like it wants to return to a shape my fingers cannot see. If I hold in the light, a hair-thin filament runs along its center with a kink where I use it as a blade. I do not know what it is. I know what it does. When I touch it, the bathroom behind me breathes out a thin sigh, almost affectionate. I should throw it away. I should cover the bag in salt. I should stop listening at 2:03 and 3:13 for proof I am not alone in my own life. If you ever visit, you will not see anything strange. You will smell a little ammonia in the hall and tell yourself someone likes things very clean. You will notice that the towel in 3B is taped a little too neatly for dust protection. You will hear the radiator click a steady pattern that could almost be a lullaby. When you wash your hands, your reflection will wait exactly as long as you do before looking up. If you raise your palm, it will raise hers, and the timing will be right. You will feel safe then, because closeness feels like safety when you are not thinking about equivalence. At night, I talk softly into the towel. I say the name the glass fogged for me the first week, the one I pretend I could not read. I apologize to the version of me that needed the job more than she wanted the truth. The towel warms as if someone leans on the other side with their head bowed. The tapping does not return. That should be a comfort. It is not. Silence is a promise I do not know how to keep. In the morning, the crescent is back under the mirror. Not moths. Never moths. Little silver skins from people who got the timing wrong. If you have a mirror that breathes, listen for your own voice inside it. If it uses your cadence, leave the towel on. If it taps your pattern, do not answer back. If it asks you to match it exactly, ask yourself what happens to you who is not in the mirror anymore. I am still here. I have the keys. I have the rent break. I have a drawer with a tiny blade that once severed a thread I did not know I had grown. Some nights I wake to a new schedule, a different hour, a different rhythm against the cloth, as if someone has learned my life and is rewriting it with better timing. And once, 2 nights ago, the towel fogged a word from inside that was not my name. It was his sister's, the neighbor's. The fog traced 4 letters and a comma, like the start of a note. The last line faded before it finished. The air smelled like nothing at all, which is how I know the seam was open for a breath I did not consent to. I stood there with my hands on the fabric and chose not to lift it. The glass cooled under my palms. Somewhere in the building a door opened in a hallway that did not exist. The radiator clicked out a rhythm I refused to learn. Now we move, if you want, to the second story. Story 2. 2 seconds faster than me if your reflection ever smiles before you do. Do not smile back. That is not advice. That is a confession dressed up like wisdom for anyone watching their own face learn them too well. I tell you this at midnight because midnight is when clocks lie politely and glass tells the truth it wants you to believe. And if you have ever trusted a mirror to keep your secrets, you already know how this ends, don't you? I work nights in a university audio lab where everything hums. The walls hum with old wiring. The racks breathe with fans. Even the floor seems to vibrate from trains that do not pass underneath anymore. The lab issued me a small office with a thrifted mirror bolted crooked behind the door. It looks like it came from a dorm bathroom. First night, I caught my reflection looking past me, eyes already shifted to the door 2 seconds before I heard my girlfriend knock, as if my face had better hearing than my ears. Maya laughed when I told her. She has the kind of laugh that tidies rooms. She said, "Your reflection smiled before you did, baby," which I only noticed because it made the room tilt. A smile should arrive with its owner. This one traveled ahead like a spare key. We chalked it up to the lab lights and the earache buzz in the mirror's frame. I pretended not to count the second between my thoughts and my face while she studied for comps, and I promised myself that if anything truly weird happened, I would walk away without looking back, which is a promise I have never once kept. At 12:02 a.m., the lab settles. The air vents huff. The sensors blink their little eyelids and sleep. That first night, the digital clock on my desk read 12:02, and the reflection read 12:03. 1 minute fast in the mirror, 1 minute honest on the desk. I tapped the glass like that could shake time into place. The frame answered with a low hum like a throat preparing a note. I told myself I was tired. I told myself to be normal. Normal cracks under small forces and never makes a sound. I watched both clocks until they matched, which they did not once. The next night at 12:02, the mirror was only 1 second ahead. The night after, half a second, as if it were drifting toward me, finding a sync it liked. I recorded it on my phone, on playback. The lab clock blinked obediently, but the mirror's clock blinked a fraction early, a tiny heartbeat too quick to be a glitch. Maya said, "Could be the ballast in those fluorescents." Faulty wiring makes everything weird. The maintenance board agreed. Someone had scrawled "replace faulty mirror in lab" on a yellow card and pinned it to the corkboard with a bent thumbtack. Faulty is a kindness people give to haunted things. I tested her theory. I cut power to the room at the breaker. The hum died. The lights went down. The server stayed up on backup, like stubborn moths. In perfect darkness, I raised my phone and framed the mirror in its faint glow. The reflection raised the phone first. It lifted my hand 2 seconds sooner than I decided to lift it. Electricity was not part of the decision. The mirror was. I stood there holding a light to a window that looked back from a future I had not reached yet, and I understood that I had been walking toward a door that had been open longer than I knew. We argued about it at breakfast. Maya wanted me to report the mirror, which is very reasonable if you're not the one whose face is learning you. My advisor wanted to write up on latency and sensor arrays, which is also reasonable if you are not the array. I chose the conference paper. Academic reputation is paper and timing. Love is timing, too, but we pretend it is a different kind. She kissed my forehead like someone kissing a child's fever and said, "You need sleep and sunlight, not equipment that learns your hands." I laughed so she wouldn't see how much I agreed. Night 4, and the mirror had me by 3/4 a second. I taped a small post-it to the corner. Log drift. The frame hummed louder. It wasn't a sound you hear with ears. It was a sound you feel in your teeth. The hum settled into a pulse that matched the clock blink. I tried not to think heartbeat and failed. My reflection smiled, the small, tight, polite smile I wear when I want meeting to end. Then I smiled, feeling stupid. In the reflection, I was already reaching for the door, as if I had decided to check the corridor for something I had not yet heard. On the fifth night, the mirror jumped to a full second faster. My lab door creaked open by itself when the HVAC cycled. The mirror was open before the creak. I said to no one, "I see you," which is a strange thing to tell a piece of glass. The mirror lifted a hand the way actors lift hands when stage directions say reach. I kept my hands in my pockets. The digital clock on my desk clicked. The mirror's clock clicked. The eye in the mirror looked like me the way a recording looks like memory. Close enough to hurt if you love precision. Far enough to deny if you love sleep. You asked for confessions. Here's one. I started timing my thoughts. I would think stand and watch the reflection stand 2 seconds before I rose. I would think blink and watch the reflection blink first. It felt like rehearsing for someone else's cues. A part of me loved it. Students call it power, when the world knows what they will want. Lab techs call it danger when the system anticipates without being asked. I loved and fear it like people love and fear attention. If you have felt seen by something that cannot see, you know the sugar and the sickness of that. Maya stopped coming by the lab after midnight. She said the mirror made her seasick, like the ground moving in an elevator that just stopped. She also said gently that my reflection looked happy when I did not. She wasn't accusing me of anything except not noticing my own face. This is how a relationship ends. One person watches the other through glass. One person watches the room. The air between both fills with time neither of you own. I told her I would move the mirror. She told me to smash it. I promised to ask facilities. We both knew how promises die when you need their ghost to stay. The facilities manager shrugged and pointed at the note. Faulty mirror. Low priority. Replace after inventory. I followed him into storage to look for a spare. Old chairs, dead monitors, a box of receipts that smelled like dust and sweet ink. On the back shelf, a second mirror, identical frame, a crack like a hair along the bottom. Someone had written not faulty on the glass in greased pencil, then wiped it, leaving the faintest ghost of letters. I brought the crack watch my father left me out of habit and set on the shelf to time how long the room felt bigger with the door open. It always feels longer with doors open, doesn't it? The cracked watch loses minutes when you need them. It gained my childhood by being always 5 minutes late to things that mattered. I carried it like a relic of a flaw I inherited, a way to forgive myself for missed trains. That night, I set it next to the desk clock and the mirror clock and listened to 3 different versions of time argue with my heart. The hum in the frame matched none of them. It pulsed at a pace that seemed to learn my breathing. I tried to slow my breath. The hum slowed. I tried to speed up. The hum smiled without a mouth. By the 6th night, the mirror was a clean 2 seconds ahead. In the reflection, my phone was already in my hand, reading a rejection email I had not received yet. It came 3 minutes later. The reflection wins early with the exact wince I win when I pretend not to care. I told Maya. She typed a long text and deleted it while I watched the dots dance. She wrote, "Move the mirror out of your office," and then added, "or I'll move it for you," and then didn't hit send. We were both negotiating with timing we could not change. That is the most human thing we do until we stop feeling human. I try to prove the wiring theory one more time, because red herrings taste like comfort if you prefer a problem with instructions. I cut the main breaker for our floor. The servers coughed on to back up again. I pulled the plug on my desk lamp and popped the batteries out of the wall clock. The lab went submarine quiet. The mirror raised its hand 2 seconds before I wondered whether I would lift mine. In the dark, the phone screen in both worlds lit my face. In the reflection, my face looked a fraction happier than I felt, as if it had finally anticipated a decision I had not allowed myself to make. Isolation does not need locked doors. It just needs belief. I stopped telling people what I saw. My advisor praised my early data and asked for a demo I could not get without confessing that the subject was me. Maya left a sweater on my chair and a voicemail I only played at noon when the mirror is slow and forgiving. The lab cameras caught me pacing and called it security risk. Someone sent an auto email reminding all-night staff not to smash university property. I pressed my palms to the desk and promised I would be good. The mirror smiled 2 seconds before I decided obedience. On the 7th night, the mirror was 2 seconds and change ahead. The change matters. It was not just anticipating actions. It anticipated choices. My reflection stood and rolled a chair away and picked up a small hammer from the tool drawer I did not know contained a hammer until the reflection knew it. When my hand reached for the drawer, the top slid open in real time to reveal the same hammer, a comfortable weight in the fist, the kind of weight a person uses to keep a promise or break one. If you have ever been handed a decision disguised as a tool, you know the nausea that follows. I could have smashed the glass then. I wanted to, but the mirror looked so pleased at the idea, like a stage that knows when the curtain falls. I set the hammer down softly as if not to wake anything, which is so funny now, because everything was already awake. I texted Maya. One more night. I need proof. She replied with a single word. No. Then another. Please. I stared at please until the letters went shapeless. I chose the lab over her and told myself it was for both of us, the way people tell themselves little lies that evolve into selves who tell them bigger ones. Midnight came. The 12:02 desync ritual began like church. Blink. Smile. Door Aish. The mirror clock read 12 hours, 2 minutes, and 58 seconds when mine read 12 hours, 2 minutes, and 56 seconds. The cracked watch on the desk face was something else entirely. Its second hand stuck, then racing, then stuck, a broken drummer fighting a song. The hum in the frame matched my breath, like it always did. I tried to breathe wrong. The hum corrected me, slow and kind, the way a parent counts for a child at the edge of a pool. If you've been taught calm by something that wants you calm, you know that calm is not always for you. At 12:03, the mirror raised both my hands as if to show me clean palms. I kept mine flat on the desk. The reflection reached behind the door where the hammer hung on a nail I had sworn did not exist there. In the room, the nail was bare. In the mirror, the hammer had been waiting forever under a strip of duct tape. The reflection lifted the hammer and smiled the tight meeting smile, and I understood it did not want to break. It wanted to teach. The breaking would be me. The lesson would be the part that continued after. Humans crave sync. Choirs know it. Soldiers know it. Couples know it too well. The mirror had been training me to desire a perfect mirror me. My body leaned to match a posture I did not decide. My shoulders rolled back 2 seconds late. My head tilted to the angle the reflection wore 2 seconds early. The room narrowed to a corridor of timing. If it reached 3 seconds, it would own the corridor on both ends. My pulse threw itself against my skin. I needed a wrong beat fast. Wrong beats are the only heaven for a person about to be conducted. I grabbed my father's crack watch and wound it until the spring set its own broken tempo. Tick, tick, pause, tick, 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 pause. I set it on the desk between the lab clock and the mirror clock and clapped softly to the watch instead of the hum. The hum tried to follow. It stumbled. The reflection smile faltered a sliver. The hammer in the mirror trembled like a hand reaching for a truth it did not want to hold. I counted with the watch. I breathed with the watch. I became wrong on purpose and hoped the mirror did not love me enough to chase a version of me that refused to be learned. The frame's hum wavered like a singer forgetting a lyric. The mirror clock blinked early, then too early, then late. I stood while my reflection hesitated. I stepped left. It stepped right, then corrected too fast, then too slow, chasing a rhythm that broke like glass in pocket. The girl in the mirror was still me. I saw it in the way her jaw tightened when she did not want to cry. That made it harder, and it had to be hard. I picked up the real hammer and aimed for bottom corner, where frames hide their parents and children. When I swung, the reflection swung first and missed. The hum shouted and became silence. The corner cracked, a hairline fracture like a secret deciding to become a story. The mirror screamed without sound the way TV screams when you hit mute. A web of tiny lines raced across the glass like frost. The digital clocks argued themselves hoarse. My father's watch ticked its stubborn broke in him. I swung again. The crack met the first crack and made AY, a letter that looks like a fork in a road, even if you do not believe in roads made of choices. Shards fell into the frame and did not hit the ground. They folded inward, disappearing into a darkness that had reflections layered like onion skin, each with my face smiling a half-second early. The last thing I saw before the silver went to black was Maya in the far back layer, not my Maya, another version, lifting her hand with a please that arrived early and never ended. The hammer went through the dark like a hand through a curtain. Cold brushed my knuckles, not temperature. Cold like a word that has no opposite. I pulled back hard and felt nothing holding me except my own want. Silence returned to the lab without a hum inside it. The mirror became a dead pain, gray and ordinary. The digital desk clock blinked obediently. The cracked watch ran out of courage and stopped. Dust floated like soft insults in the beam of my phone light. I did not feel victorious. I felt watched by the absence of watching. The hammer on the floor looked like a decision cooling. I texted Maya. "It's done. No proof. Come see anyway." She replied with a heart I did not deserve, and a one that read more like an if. In the days after, small echoes rang. Immediate relief. The mirror stayed dead, a chalkboard with no chalk. Delayed echo. The black screens of powered-down monitors caught my face and sometimes smiled a fraction too soon, but only if I stared long enough. I stopped staring. The lab cameras flagged my sudden preference for working with the lights on. The maintenance note on the corkboard vanished. In its place, a fresh card read replaced faulty wiring in Audio Lab. Faulty is a kindness you give a story you do not want to tell again. My advisor accepted a different paper. Maya slept on my couch and watched me watch surfaces until we both laughed, and then we both did not. She asked what I thought happened to earlier owners of that mirror. I said I did not know and sounded like a liar who wanted to be thanked for honesty. She put my father's watch on the windowsill where plants live and said, "You will fix this in you by breaking the habit of looking for what wants you first." The kindest curses arrived as good advice. I said yes to it the way people say yes to stairs. I took the old mirror to storage and slid it behind the cracked twin. Someone had written "not faulty" on that one, once in big letters, then wiped them away. I thought about writing "not hungry" on mine. I did not. I left the lab and walked outside into noon, where reflections behave because daylight makes them tired. In the cafe window, my face joined a dozen others, each trying on their own future one blink at a time. No one smiled before I did. That should have settled me. It did not. And peace that is also suspicion is a kind you can live with if you do not ask it for a promise. The first night with the mirror gone, the lab felt too quiet. Quiet has its own hum if you sit with it. At 12:02, the desk clock blinked. The door stayed closed. No smile arrived early. I sat there waiting for a thing I said I did not want, which is honest, if not brave. I breathed my father's stopwatch and heard nothing answer except my own lungs. I do not know if I won. Winning implies an opponent, and I suspect it was only a version of me that loved Sink so much she forgot to be a person. That is not an enemy. That is a warning I drew a mouth on. If you ever see your reflection get the timing wrong in your favor, do not fix it. Do not tap the glass like a metronome. Do not breathe to it. Do not let it learn the places you keep your urgent things. If your lover says your smile arrived too early, thank them for noticing. Smile later on purpose. Keep a slow watch for yourself and accept the minutes it loses like a tide to a gentler world. The lab mirror is gone. The frame on the wall hangs empty, a picture of nothing that still makes the room tilt when I come in at night. Last week I walked past the dark TV in the lounge at 12:02. The screen showed my face for a second. It was normal. Then it was almost normal. The smile tried to arrive early, then stumbled as if a conductor forgot the cue. 3 dots appeared in the corner, like a typing bubble in a text that never sends. The image cleared. The hum did not return. I kept walking. I am still learning how not to sing along when the wrong song plays at the right time, which is another way to say I am trying to be late for myself when it matters. Now we move to the third story. If you are still with me, tell me if you have ever seen a reflection that knew you better than you did. Story 3. The antique shop that wouldn't show your face if a mirror refuses to show you. Do not assume it is broken. Assume it is choosing. I learned that in a shop that smelled like lavender oil and old receipts, a shop with a handwritten sign that said closing forever in 7 days, and a back room where dust rested on everything except one oval of glass that stayed spotless, as if someone kept breathing on the other side. If you collect antiques, you know the thrill of a find. If you have ever felt a find look back at you, you know the other feeling I am trying not to name. The owner was a careful man with hands that moved the air before they moved objects. His name was Minor, which he said was a family joke, and he didn't smile when he said it. He had shelves of clock faces without clocks, boxes of keys without locks, and a gallery wall of frames without pictures. In the far corner stood the mirror, gilded, oval, veined with hairline cracks and leaf. It reflected the shop so crisply I could read the curled prices from across the room. It reflected everything. Everything but me, which I tried not to admit. I told myself the angle was wrong, that I stood just outside its cone of honesty. I stepped left. The mirror showed the same aisle, the same lamp, the same chipped violin case. No me. I stepped right, and the scent of lavender grew sweeter, like polish the bottle had forgotten it had been. I lifted my chin the way you do at a camera you don't trust. Nothing. Behind the frame, tucked into a split in the backing paper. A thin note peeked out like a pressed leaf. It said, "In old blue ink, do not sell," and someone had underlined "not twice." Minor shuffled up. "That one doesn't move," he said, like he was warning me about a dog tied short. I teased the price out of him anyway. He waved me off and muttered about browsers who never buy and then never leave, a joke that didn't find a laugh. I wear my grandmother's cameo when I hunt. It's a small oval face and shell, brass chain, warmer than gold. She told me it brings a fair eye. In the mirror space where my chest should have been was only the back wall and a hanging watch on a velvet hook, ticking faintly in a rhythm I could not place. If you've ever needed a win to stop a family argument, you'll understand my urgency. My brother thinks I romanticize junk. My clients think I turn junk romantic. I needed a piece that would make both shut up. A mirror with a story sells itself. Day 1, I kept my mouth shut about the empty reflection. Day 2, I brought a friend who flips lamps. She called it an illusion. The silver backing thin, the glass angled, tricks people love more than truth. We tried different heights and lines of sight. Everyone else reflected like sinners at church. I was the only absence, a relief carved perfectly to my shape. At the close of day 2, when Miner draped a sheet over the mirror, the room exhaled. It wasn't air. It was relief. He said he covered it for dust. He said it like a person says I'm fine. I went home with lavender in my hair and do not sell in my mouth. A splinter I worried with my tongue until it bled into every thought. That night, my phone pinged with an auction notice. The whole inventory would go under the hammer in 7 days. If I wanted it, I had a week to make a decision I could not undo, and the ticking in my head matched the ticking I hadn't heard in my house before. On day 3, I brought a flashlight and a tape measure in my caution. I asked Miner if I could examine the back. He nodded like a priest giving last rites, then vanished to answer phone that didn't ring. Dust clung to the backing paper in a soft pelt. The frame's nails were original, bent and hammered flat, the way old repairmen leave messages to each other. I set the sheet aside. The smell of lavender became sharp, like oil a hand had warmed. I leaned close and saw, not my face, but a chair directly behind me. The chair was empty and very bright, as if a skylight I didn't have had opened. If you want to prove a trick wrong, starve it of light. That evening I asked Miner to lock up with me inside. I wanted the shop in pitch dark. He hesitated, then handed me a brass key on a ribbon like a dare. He was tired of losing. When the last lamp clicked off, the mirror did not go black. It showed a lit room that was not mine, bright and glass crisp, all the familiar objects present and accounted for, minus my body. I waved where I knew I was standing and watched the empty chair wait, as if the person who should have been me had simply stepped out for a moment. In that lit knot room, a figure blurred past a far aisle. I thought it was a trick of my eyes until the blur paused long enough to resolve into the slope of a shoulder, a coat collar, a hand in a reaching shape. I raised my flashlight and took 3 quick photos. The beam looked dull in the mirror, like a pen run dry. In the real shop, the beam cut a clean white path across dust. In the mirror's shop, there was no dust at all. Nothing settled. Nothing aged. The smell on my side was sweet and cloying and new, the way flowers smell before they go strange. Optical illusion. My friend texted when I sent one of the photos, and I want to believe her, because illusions do not keep you at night. I told Miner the next morning that the mirror was faulty. Of course it is, he said, then added, almost polite, but it's also hungry. He said his wife had loved that mirror once, when the shop was young, before lavender turned from romance to ritual. He said she stood there every morning and pinned on a brooch, and one day she did not appear in it at all. The note was his hand. Do not sell. But I'm an old man, he said, and auctions love a good story. I should have walked away. Even telling you this now, I hear the choice I had and the one I took. Day before I put money on the counter and asked him to name a number that would make him feel like keeping the note another year. He said he couldn't sell. I said the auction would anyway. He looked at the mirror, not me, and said, "All right, but you take it now. No returns, no exceptions, no complaints." He wrote those words on a receipt in the same old blue ink. When the sheet fell across the oval and settled wrong, like it draped over a person, he looked relieved and I felt watched. At home, the mirror turned my living room into a showroom I didn't remember designing. Colors truer, corners straighter, bukstadir. But in the center where I stood, there was nothing. I called my brother to prove a point, and he said he could see me just fine on FaceTime, which made me more nervous. not less. I propped the mirror against a wall and taped the sheet down at the corners. The relief that swept the room was immediate, like static discharging from a wool sweater. Then I heard it. A faint ticking from inside the frame, not my clock, not my stove, a watch behind the glass counting softly without hands. If you have ever loved an object the way people love people, you will understand the next foolish thing I did. On day 5, I wore my grandmother's cameo and stood close enough to fog my breath. The oval of her profile nestled below my throat. In the mirror, the empty room showed the velvet hook with the watch and the polished chair and a vase of lavender sprigs that did not exist in my house. I reached to touch the glass. My fingertip met cool, ordinary smoothness, but the cameo chain tugged. It was small, like a kitten wearing a string. When I stepped back, the chain was no longer around my neck. I do not remember it breaking. I do not remember it falling. 1 second I wore the cameo, warm as skin, and the next my collarbone felt light and naked, and the mirror's empty room had a tiny glint on the seat of the bright chair, a coin of shell and brass that belonged on me. I pressed my palm flat to the glass. The ticking quickened, not frantic, just eager, like someone walking faster when they see a door about close. "We can frame you better," a voice said from nowhere I could place, a whisper like lavender breathed on a window at the end of a long day. I called Miner. He did not pick up. The shop line rang and rang, as if it were a bell sunk in sand. I went back anyway. The windows were papered with auction prep and block letters, and inside, the gallery wall of empty frames had become full, not with pictures but with arrangements. A coat sleeve pinned in an elegant curve, a gloved hand holding a hat forever mid-off, a woven bag hanging as if from an invisible wrist. I did not want to look, but I did. In the oval mirror at the back, the shop glowed lighter and warmer, and a woman in a summer dress stood with her back to me. She wore my grandmother's cameo. The chain lay along the bow of her neck, like a signature. Her hair was pinned in the soft way of older photographs, and she was as real as anything in my life, except she was not visible outside the glass. "Sophie," Miner said behind me, and his voice cracked on a name like a dry board, not my name. The woman in the mirror turned her head slightly, as if a person had called her from a hallway she liked. The ticking built into a tiny tide. "I wrote the note after I lost her," he said, "but I did not own enough days to obey it." He showed me a ledger, the kind you keep when you expect someone to one day ask where you went wrong. Customers listed with dates, small X marks in the margin, a row in 1989 with Sophie underlined. Then, in newer hand, missing, the word doing nothing to move time in either direction. He said the mirror preferred people who loved objects enough to love frames. He said it promised to put them where they would be seen forever. He said it spoke in bargains. "It is fond of collectors," he said. "It tells them it can frame them better than life did. You may wonder why I did not smash it then. I did." He put a hand on my arm. "The way you stop a child from running into traffic when it breaks," he said. "The pieces are not on our side." He showed me a little cut on his thumb that never scabbed. "Do not give it reasons." Outside, a truck honked, a sound so ordinary it felt like a taunt. I told him it stole my cameo. He closed his eyes like someone remembering a hymn and said, "It returns nothing. It only displays." Then, because kindness can be a curse, he handed me the receipt I had signed and said, "It is yours. Do what you believe." Day 6, I did what you will judge. I brought the mirror back home, taped the sheet down tighter, and laid lavender along the baseboard like it was salt. The ticking softened to a heartbeat you could miss if you were careless. But I am never careless with sound. Twice in the night, the sheet rose and settled as if a person beneath it had taken a breath. In the morning, Handprints bloomed across the fabric where a chest might press, and a face might have pushed gently to smell my house. The hands were not mine. The spacing was wrong. The pressure shallow and polite. "We can frame you better," a whisper said, amused by my tape. Isolation is the price you pay for being believed only by the thing that wants you. My brother stopped returning my calls. My friend sent me listings for sensible mirrors with sensible glass and sensible frames like power lines in winter. Miner's shop closed for good while I stood in my kitchen with scissors and a list of reasons to be reasonable. I wrote, "Smash it," on the top line. I wrote, "Pull the sheet and reach fast," on the next. On the third, I wrote, "Wait for the auction and let someone else be foolish." The ticking argued for now in the language of seconds, which is persuasive if you live by clocks. Just after midnight, the house felt so awake that not acting became a kind of action. I told myself I would only lift a corner to see if the cameo lay where I had seen it on that bright chair. I told myself I would not put my hand in. I told myself stories like bandages you pat to feel brave. The lavender on the floor smelled new, then sweeter, then too sweet, and I lifted the sheet. The mirror did not show my dim room. It showed a sunlit corner in soft gold, a gallery arranged for admiration, a chair with a cameo on it, and the woman in the summer dress turned as if to say, "See, it looks right there." Point of no return is not a line on the floor. It's a second you keep until you spend it. I reached. The glass was smooth and cool and first day of school cold. My fingers slipped through like water, not wet, but with the give of nothing resisting. The chain was warm, living warm, as if a throat had worn it seconds ago. My thumb touched the shell. The ticking sped to the rhythm of boot heels on a museum floor. A hand met mine from the other side and placed a cameo into my palm. Polite, firm, the way a curator returns a piece to someone who has finally learned how to look. I should have pulled back, but the kindness in that touch felt like permission, and permission is a narcotic to people who work alone. The hand held mine a moment longer than necessary, and I felt the smallest pressure, like someone testing the comfort of an armrest. Around us, frames in the mirror brightened as if eyes had opened behind them. In the periphery, figures stood in elegant poses, 1,000 choices edited down to the one that would be remembered. The woman in the summer dress stepped closer with her head, inclined in gratitude shaped like invitation. The cameo chain coiled once around my finger like a ring. There's always a trick. The trick was this. The hand that gave me back the cameo matched my hand perfectly, down to the small nick beside the index knuckle from a clumsy chisel in May. It was my hand with better lighting. It was my hand pinned and admired. It was my hand, framed. I looked up and saw myself where my absence had been, not a reflection, but a composition. The curve of my shoulder was corrected. The bend of my neck improved. My eyes were the shape I promise my clients their rooms can be if they just choose better frames. "We can frame you better," the whisper said, not bargaining now, only stating policy. I pulled. The chain tightened once against my finger, as if a promise had a snag before it broke. The hand let go more gracefully than I deserved. I fell back onto my real rug with a sound like a book closing in a quiet library. The cameo lay in my palm. The sheet dropped. The room went average again, imperfect in the ways I have learned to call home. I lay there with lavender in my throat, and a ticking that faded the way applause fades when a performer has left. I laughed, dry, ugly, grateful, and said, "No," to a piece of glass that does not need yes to continue. In the morning the sheet bore a new impression. Not hands this time. A face, forehead, nose, mouth. The kind of face press a person makes when they want you to see they are smiling without teeth. I traced it with one finger and felt nothing but cotton and the ordinary dimple of weave. The cameo clasp was bent, and I fixed it with pliers in grandmother's memory, which is a way some families pray. When I held the cameo to my throat, my skin remembered the chain. In the oval glass on my vanity, my face looked like a face, mine, and for that hour I believed in my narrow victory. I did not return the mirror. Receipt or no, there is nowhere safe to return a door. I did not smash it. Miner's warning sat gentle as a hand over mine. I bought a heavy drop cloth. I taped it down in a grid like a quilt and stacked books along the base like a Fort child me would have admired. The ticking fell silent for a whole day, and I thought, foolishly, that quiet meant surrender. That night the drop cloth sagged forward at the center, like a sleeper breathing. I put my palm there, and it pressed back just long enough to be tender, then withdrew with exquisite manners. When the auction catalog arrived, the mirror was not in it. Miner must have pulled it, or the cataloger had better sense than me. The lot list included frames, empty, marked as circa unknown. In the preview photos, one looked like it had a shadow where a wrist would rest. I didn't bid. I sent the images to my brother, and did not say why I was crying. He told me I should sell the mirror to a museum with insurance and security, and people with words for dangerous beauty. I told him museums are where things go when we want to pretend we still own them, and he did not argue because he heard the truth I did not intend. If you come to my house, you will not see anything extraordinary. You will smell a little lavender because I am superstitious, and because a plant on the windowsill refuses to die. You will notice the sheet in the back room is taped too neatly for a half-finished project. If you stand long enough, you will hear nothing special, except your own breath and the clock you brought with you. You will feel watched when you stop telling yourself the right story, and maybe you will say, like my friend said, it's an illusion. If you do, I will nod, and we will both pretend that illusions do not learn our names. Sometimes, late, I lift a corner of the cloth and look only at the edge of the oval, where gilding has worn soft. That much is safe. Sometimes a scent of lavender rises that is not mine, old, sweet, too sweet, the way perfume smells on a dress and photograph. Sometimes I feel a warmth that is not the room. I do not look at the glass. I do not say yes into a world that frames people better than life did. I whisper two words that fit around a cameo, like a clasp. Not today. On good nights, the ticking pauses as if a curator has put down their pencil to let me pass. And once, last week, I found a new note wedged in the backing paper where "Do not sell" used to be. The blue ink had bled slightly, as if it had been written on the other side of damp glass. It said very plainly, "Do not look," underlined once. It was my handwriting. I hadn't written it. I kept it anyway, pressed flat behind the backing like a leaf. Some days I obey better than others. The handprints return when I do not. The face impression lingers when I hesitate. The cameo lies cool against my collarbone and reminds me that being seen is not the same thing as being safe. If a mirror refuses you, take the compliment. You are not yet composed. You are not yet ready to be still. Keep your old watch that runs a little slow. Keep your imperfect frames. If you hear a polite voice offering to arrange you forever, remember that arrangements are kind of goodbye with nicer lighting. I still have the mirror. It still has its hunger. We live together like neighbors who gnawed in the hall, each pretending not to hear the other cook. On very quiet nights, the clock draws in just a breath and relaxes as if something is practicing patience. Now, it is the fourth story if you want to keep going. You're right to check. The last draft wasn't as long as the plan. Here's the fully completed version, expanded to match the outline and pacing. Story 4. 13th floor mirror check if an elevator ever shows you a floor the buttons swear doesn't exist. Don't call it glitch. Glitches don't hum in your bones. They don't say your name over the PA at 1 in the morning, and they don't smile at you from the mirrored wall when your own face is still deciding whether to be afraid. Do they? I was 3 weeks into probation as a night auditor in a glass and steel high-rise that pretended it had no 13th floor. The panel hopped from 12 to 14 like a neat lie. My job was simple on paper. Count badge pings, walk the mezzanines, sign the mirror check clipboard every hour, and catch the last 2:30 a.m. train before the city forgot me. Simple. Until the mirrors started keeping their own records, and mine sounded like rumors in comparison. Leah worked nights too, compliance in a cube of glass that made everyone look expensive. She wore her ID on a retractable clip that snapped back against her hip. In the lobby mirror, her numbers read backward. In the elevator's rear wall, sometimes they read forward, which we joked was lucky, like the reflection was helping. That's the kind of joke you tell before you learn what help costs in a building that hums between 12 and 14 like a throat clearing. The first mirror check was at 1 a.m. The PA purred. Mirror check 100 hours, in a voice too polite to belong to anyone I knew. I initialed the maintenance binder in the sub-basement, where everything smelled like cold water and dust. Someone had once scribbled mirror replacement, floor 13, and then tried to carve the words out with a pen until the cardboard went white. You can cross out a line. You can't cross out the hand that wrote it, can you? Elevator B took me up. Numbers climbed. 9, 10, 11, 12. The mirrored wall ahead of me flashed 13 like a camera, just long enough to be an insult. The panel in my car stayed disciplined on 12. The hum in the glass thickened until I could count it with the soft part of my tongue. When the doors opened, I stepped onto 14, too bright, too clean, but in the reflection a corridor labeled 13 yawned wide and warm, carpet pattern wrong, lights a shade yellower than ours. I put my palm to the wall. The steel felt normal. The mirror felt like it was listening for my pulse. Lucky number, Leah texted, and sent a photo of her screen with a caption that promised she'd sign something that saved my job later, because she liked me. I took her a can of vending machine tea as a thank you bribe. In her cube glass, my face looked brave. In the elevator as we rode back down, my face looked like it belonged to someone who'd learned not to blink. You hear that? She asked, tilting her head. Between floors, the mirrors hummed low as a fridge and higher as a tuning fork, layered like two truths arguing softly. The red herring showed up, wearing a badge and a blueprint. There's a sealed mezzanine between 12 and 14. Our shift lead said board, HVAC and water tanks, closed to the public, nothing to see. She showed me a paper plan with a pale rectangle where 13 would live if 13 were honest. It soothed something small and gullible in me. Then why the mirror checklist? I asked. Legacy policy, she said, as if policies die easy if you stop feeding them with ink. At 12:58 the PA clicked on again and exhaled static that sounded like a person deciding how to begin. Mirror check, it said, repeating itself like someone talking to a recording and hearing the playback too soon. Leah stepped into elevator A with me, leaned her head against the mirror, and watched our 200 cells pretend there was only one of each. If we're stuck, we split, she said, tapping her badge. You make the train. I told her we'd both make it. Promises are cheap until the glass wants payment. We stopped at 14. In the mirrored wall, the corridor on 13 gleamed like a hotel. A cleaning cart rolled across the threshold there, leaving what were tracks that shone as if someone had lacquered them. Our side was bare, air-conditioned, and humming. Leah frowned and crouched to touch the sill. Her finger came up dry. I hate magic, she said, but she didn't move away. In the reflection, a janitor in an older uniform paused, lifted 2 fingers to his temple like a salute, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. His patch said Grace under a logo the building retired before I was hired. Back in the maintenance room, I dug for proof like a raccoon digs for glitter. The binder had a mirror check column filled with initials that walked back years. Grace's name showed up, neat loops, all the way to 2 weeks ago. After that, a blank line and a note in another hand, humstrong between 1214. The kind of note you write when you want to be helpful without putting your name in the book the building reads. I ran my thumb over the pencil mark until it shone silver in the fluorescent buzz. Mirror check, 0100. The PA said again, a minute late this time, softer, like someone had stepped closer to the microphone. Leah texted, going to the mezz to chase a signature, be right back, which sounded normal if you believed in sealed floors as a kind of polite fiction. My stomach made a sound that wasn't hunger, and the elevator's hum answered, like we'd agreed on a time. The indicator over the door ticked up. The mirror rolled 13. The car rolled 14. The difference continued like a song only I could hear. I set a rubber door stop, the wedge janitors use when they need a door to disobey, on the sill and try to catch the elevator in the act. The car fought me with a gentle patience that felt like strong hands saying not yet. The mirrored corridor stayed open in its world, soft carpets and the friendly glare of a greener exit sign. For a second, a flash of Leah's ponytail crossed the 13 in the glass. Did you see that? I asked the nothing that was supposed to be there. The hum laughed and went back to counting. The second check came at 2 o'clock on the dot, because clocks like to pretend they know what's next. Mirror check, 100 hours, the PA said, and then added, Mara, in a voice that sounded tired like I do when I've been awake too long. I looked up at the ceiling grills and said, Who is this? The speaker took a small breath. You can hear a breath even through old plastic. Report, it said, with the exact cadence I use when I'm reading a form aloud to make sure I don't miss a line. For a second, I thought I was pranking myself. And then the Wetwell track reappeared across the mirrored threshold like a signature I wasn't authorized sign. Leah pinged me. Mez is a joke. Doors are welded. Coming back. She added a bad emoji and a train. I rode to meet her. On 12, the hum spiked as if something were happy to see me. In the mirror, 13 glowed like a room you aren't invited to until you decided to be rude. Leah stepped into the car, eyed the panel, and said, We good. Her badge in the main wall looked backward. In the rear wall, the numbers read clear as day. Lucky, I said, and the hum purred agreement like a cat that never comes when called. We rose. The doors parted on 14, the one the building blesses. In the reflection, the bright corridor on 13 showed Leah already stepping out, pushing the old orange cart by the handle, her reverse badge reading forward because the rules in the mirror were not my rules. The Leah in the car with me watched me watching the glass and asked what I saw. I said, You, and left the rest of my throat like you do when you don't want to go where it leads. If you've ever had two truths show up wearing the same face, you know how your knees feel then. The red herring tried to save me. I found a locked service hatch in a utility corridor with cold air bleeding through the seam. The blueprint called it storage. I pressed my ear to it and heard the hum of the elevators, the whisper of ducks, and a lower tone beneath that, an almost voice repeating a syllable my throat wanted to make. I told myself it was a fan bearing. I told myself anything that let me keep breathing like this was normal. The PA obliged with a little cough of static and a too calm mirror check. The third hour lurched close. The last train's countdown on my phone bled minutes into the floor. The hum between 12 and 14 settled into a pitch my lungs tried to match without permission. Leah texted, I'll walk you to the doors, and Aaliyah in the mirror lifted a hand in the same motion 2 seconds early, palm resting on the invisible glass between our worlds. Her ID number in the reflection was crisp, forward, eager to be read. The one beside me flipped back and forth pendulum clean with the sway of the clip, honest in all the wrong places. Pick, the elevator said without speaking, in the way a room says it by standing too close. If I stepped toward the bright corridor inside the mirror, I believed I could drag Leah back with me. If I didn't, I believed I would keep a promise to a train that doesn't wait. Choices cost the same whether you count them or not. Recite your badge, I told both Leahs, buying time or pretending to. The Leah beside me rattled her digits and made a face like someone being reasonable in a movie. The Leah in the reflection said them in the cadence of the PA's mirror check voice, too perfect on the last 2 numbers, like she practiced on loop. Grace, I said to the ceiling, because old names make rooms remember. If that's you on the PA, say my name wrong. People who only know you through recordings always get something tiny wrong. The speaker sighed. Mara, it said, flawlessly, then hummed the building's note like it was proud to have nailed it. In the mirror, the janitor in the old uniform stepped into view, set 2 fingers on his temple again, then pointed down the 13 hallway where wet tracks faded as they dried. The Leah in the reflection took a breath and smiled the way you smile when you're about to explain something you've already decided. Point of no return is a hinge you feel in your ribs. I put my shoulder to the closing door and held it like a person holding a thought that doesn't belong to them. The 13 corridor in the mirror brightened, opening like a mouth. The 14 hallway in our air dimmed a fraction, enough to make the fluorescent hum change key. Don't leave me, the Leah beside me said, quiet, absolutely human. Then come with me, I said, and in the mirror my mouth formed the words 2 seconds early, because the glass was tired pretending who led and who followed. The car tried to decide without us. The doors kissed my shoulder. The hum climbed, teeth on foil. The mirrored Leah lifted her palm to mine, and the temperature of the glass matched my skin exactly, like it had been paying attention since I was hired. The badge on her hip flashed forward again, daring me to treat numbers like truth. The badge on my Leah's hip spun, clicked, spun, and the clip's recoil sounded like a coin you don't catch. Mara, the PA said, warmer now, almost fond, and somewhere far down the shaft something sighed, like a floor finally choosing a weight. I let go. I jabbed 14, then 1, then 14 again like a gambler, as if patterns could bribe machinery. The doors pulled in and decided to favor the air I was breathing over the air the mirror wanted to loan me. The corridor labeled 13 flattened in the reflection like a photo on a screen, then darkened to our drab gray. The hum collapsed into the walls and sulked. Leah swore softly, the way you do when something private almost happened in public, and we rode down the lobby without breathing in unison. Relief arrived like a free drink and cost the same as a habit. We sprinted, we laughed, we made the 2:30 with 2 minutes to spare. On the train, Leah rested her head on my shoulder, and I watched our faces in the window smudge into a kinder pair than we were. I texted Grace's old number from the staff list. It's Mara. You okay? And got no delivery line, only green. I told myself that meant nothing. Promises to yourself sound best in transit. They expire when doors open. At noon, the shift lead forwarded an email with the subject attendance discrepancy. Duplicate badge event. The log showed Leah's ID accessing 12 at 0:57 and 1:42. It also showed the same number accessing 13 at 1:03 and 1:58. Someone had added a sticky note. DB bug? Investigate. Below that, a smaller entry. Service 13, card out 059 with a badge ID I recognize from the retired uniform. Grace. The system called her offline, like that was a status a person could choose. Leah didn't show up that night. Her manager said she'd texted that she'd be late. Then she didn't text again. Then the text vanished in the thread like a polite magic trick. Her badge pinged the turnstile once and refused to ping anywhere I could go. I stood in the lobby staring at the chrome sculpture management calls art. Its bent surface is basically a mirror that believes in angles more than honesty. Across it, for a breath, a ghost number 13 slid like a fish and was gone, and in the stretched steel, a woman tilted her head and lifted a hand in a way I recognized from a place I was not. I still work nights. Probation turned into a job, because buildings don't care if your stories balance, only that you keep making columns. The mirror check line still lives on the clipboard. I initial on the hour. Between 12 and 14, the hum is weather. Some nights it rains in my ears. Some nights it clears. Sometimes the mirror rolls 13 without shame. Sometimes it behaves and lets me pretend. Sometimes a wet track flashes across a threshold I can't stand in, then fades before I can point and say, look. I check badges now like I'm reading fortunes. In steel and glass, numbers flip the way swimmers turn at the wall. If I see a reversal at the wrong time, I don't panic. I move 3 inches left so I can see the front panel and the rear mirror and the door gap all at once. I stand off-center, so the building can't learn my exact timing and wear me like jewelry. If you ride with me after midnight, you'll think I'm superstitious. Maybe I am. Maybe superstition is what you owe a place that keeps 2 ledgers for 1 life. Last week, at 1 a.m., the PA whispered mirror check, then rammed the word backward for 2 syllables, then forward again like it was practicing a language it only spoke at night. The indicator above the door gave us 14. In the reflection, 13 glowed, and for an instant 2 figures overlapped. A man in an old uniform saluting with 2 fingers and a woman with her badge reversed, clipped taut like a tether she couldn't cut. They lifted their hands, not to me, but to someone just behind me I didn't turn fast enough to meet. The doors closed with the kindness of an answer you don't deserve. If an elevator ever shows you a floor that isn't supposed to exist, and someone you love smiles at you from that floor with a badge number 2 perfect to be alive, you'll understand why some of us choose trains over proof. The unresolved part sits where I can't reach it. Leah's desk plant is neither watered nor dead. Her ID shows up twice a week in logs that insist they are not creative writing. Grace's cart squeaks in a recording that crashes the server when we try to play it. The hum, between 12 and 14, remains punctual. On the last page of the binder, under a decade of initials, someone wrote in dull pencil, mirror replacement, floor 13, and didn't cross it out. Graphite shines if you rub it long enough. I don't. I sign my neatest name, press the button for up, and when 12 becomes 14, I give the walls my attention like it's rent. If you catch me staring, don't be polite. Look with me. Tell me if you see 13 anywhere it shouldn't be. Tell me if your badge looks wrong in the wrong glass, and if you feel a note in your ribs change key. Because some nights, when I walk past the chrome in the lobby, a faint 13 glides across, and for a heartbeat my own ID reads forward like it belongs to a version of me who stepped where I didn't. The sculpture holds that image gently and lets it go, the way a building forgives no one and nothing. It just stays legible. The doors open like mouths that learn my name. The 2:30 hums toward me like a train that never waits. I step in, a little off-center, and keep my hands where the glass can count them without learning how they choose. Story 5. When the bathroom mirror learned my name if a room ever says your name when you are alone, do not answer on the first try. Names are keys, and some doors are shaped like you. Mine was a bathroom with a fan that rattled like a lazy coin and a mirror with a hairline crack along the bottom edge. The kind of flaw you only notice when steam crawls across it like breath. The first time it spoke, it was not a word so much as the idea of one. The syllables nudged through tile and glass and settled right behind my teeth, patient as a hand waiting to be held. I moved on a Tuesday, because that is the day mistakes look like confidence. The apartment had west windows and floors that remembered other people's furniture. I make a living editing audio from home until waveforms feel like weather, and I told myself the quiet would make me faster. My partner, Sam, lives 2 neighborhoods away and visits when deadlines allow. We are both very good at pretending we sleep well. The mirror hung above a shallow sink that sang on cold mornings, and the faucet dripped every 5th breath. Plink, plink, a metronome that already knew my moods. On the first night, the shower fog wrote a scribble across the glass. Not a word, not even a letter. A line that hooked back like a fish deciding. I wiped it with my forearm and told the empty room not to be dramatic. When I opened the medicine cabinet, a yellowed envelope slid down from behind the shelf and tapped the porcelain like a warning. It was addressed to a previous tenant. Stamp returned to sender, and a label across it read notice. Lease abandoned. I set it aside the way you set aside a problem that is not yours yet. The vent above the mirror let out a long, secret-sounding sigh. Sleep arrived late and sour. At 3:07 a.m., the faucet drip synced to a rhythm that felt like syllables. Space like someone learning a name. I lay there counting like a child trying to barter with a clock. Plink. Pause. Blink, blink. The first breathy attempt came as if through a wall. My name softened the way Sam says it when they want me awake without panic. I did not move. I counted to 60, then 60 again, like I could make a room forget me by outweighting it. But the second attempt pressed closer and truer, and I pretended morning is something you can ask for if you are polite enough. If you have ever needed to be rational in a ridiculous moment, you know the next day. I climbed on a chair and checked the vent. Dust. A small fan with 2 blades and a wobble. At noon, steam curled across the mirror and drew a lazy loop. This time it kept a straight line along the bottom crack, like it was tracing a mouth that wasn't ready to open. I wiped it and told myself the pattern was in me, not the glass. Sam came by with coffee, kissed my hair, and said I looked better in bright light. When they showered, they laughed and wrote their name in the fog, like we were younger than we have time to be. That night, I left my phone recording on the vanity. At 3:07, the fan shivered to a halt as if to be courteous. The faucet's plink found metronome, and the room pulled my name through tile. On playback, the voice was a whisper away a knife is a paperweight when no one is touching it. It tried my name and missed the soft vowel in the middle, then tried again and almost smiled. I covered the mirror with a towel. Careless and quick, a move you make when you pretend you have no one to impress. The room went quiet so completely that I laughed, a raw edge that tasted like I had bitten my tongue. Relief is expensive. The next night the towel said my name instead. Not loud, not even clear. The fibers moved under my palm like lips. I pulled it down, furious at fabric, which is embarrassing to remember. The mirror felt cool and innocent. Fog from the earlier shower had left a few loops on the glass that dried into faint lines, like a child's homework. Sam teased me gently and offered a better explanation. The vents carry voices from other apartments. It is a kind building, they said, full of bad recordings. I nodded because I wanted to sleep more than I wanted to be right, and the towel warmed as if it liked to lie. By the 4th night, the whisper had the cadence of a person who has practiced. The fan cut off by itself at 3:06, a courtesy I did not ask for. The faucet's plinks fell into the rhythm of my name as if water had learned to read it. The voice formed the first half and waited for me to give it the rest. I asked too loudly, "Who is this?" And the room replied with silence that sounded pleased. I asked again, softer. The silence leaned in, and for a second I swear I could hear my own breath through someone else's teeth, which is not a metaphor I chose. I went downstairs to the office for adult help. The building manager shrugged like he had auditioned for that role and been cast too many times. He mentioned ventilation. He mentioned pipes. He mentioned the previous tenant leaving without notice and offered a number for a locksmith, which I did not need. In the mailroom, the mixed-up envelope had friends, a small stack of notices with the same abandoned stamp. I left them where I found them, because that is what you do when a story is trying too hard to introduce itself. Back upstairs, the fog wrote the first 3 letters of my name and waited, as if learning patience from me. You asked me to be honest. I was tired enough to try curiosity. I stood in the doorway and said my name quietly, almost a test, almost a refusal. The mirror answered with my name pronounced exactly right. Hearing yourself from not you changes the temperature of your blood. It felt like a hand on the back of my neck, not cruel but persuasive. I covered the glass again, and the towel warmed against my palms, the way air warms when someone is practicing being a body. That warmth faded when I whispered stop. The room listened like a pet that loves to pretend it obeys, and I loved and hated it for that. When sleep happens, in pieces you pay for it during the day. I missed a deadline and told a client a file I corrupted, which is such a tidy lie for an audio editor that it almost cleans the kitchen for you. Sam slept over and said it would help if we faced the weird together. At 3:07, both of us awake and pretending not to be, the whisper said my name as if reading it off a page. Sam sat up fast enough to hit the wall. "Did you hear that?" they asked, and the towel answered yes in my cadence without using that word. We did not sleep after that, because we could not agree which lie would save us. By the end of the week, the fog had context. After a shower, it wrote my first name, then my last neat, no flourish, and beneath a small curve along the crack like a test smile. I kept wiping it clean, and it kept returning like we were practicing alone together. The dripping faucet tapped out syllables that matched my childhood nickname, then stopped, embarrassed for knowing me that way. If you have ever heard your old self answer a question you did not ask, you know the way your skull feels like a room smaller than it was before you entered. I bought foam to cover the vent and tape to seal the towel to the mirror, because people in scary stories are always careless until it is too late. The fan quieted. The apartment settled heavy and honest. At 3:07, the building blew a fuse. The blackout silenced the hallway machines, the refrigerator hum, the comfort noises I had learned to forgive. The mirror spoke anyway, in my voice 5 years older, with the rasp I carry after arguments. It said my name like I was behind the glass and needed reminding. In the dark, the faucet's rhythm became a mouth opening and closing, and the towel, taped down, whispered please, which is a word I use when I'm asking myself for mercy. The red herring died beautifully. I pulled the vent foam free, held my breath, and listened for other people's lives. No neighbor sang. No television comforted. The ducks gave me nothing to blame. The voice stayed. It did not offer a story. It waited the way a question waits when it knows the answer lives in your throat already. When the power returned, the mirror fogged by itself and wrote a sentence I could not finish reading before it bled away. Let me be, it looked like, or let me in, or let me finish. And I left the room and locked the door and watched the knob like you watch a sleeping animal decide whether it wants awake. Sleep deprivation is a staircase with the treads misplaced. I stumbled up and down it all week. Sam started staying at their place and calling at noon instead of midnight. They needed rest that did not have my name in it, which I understood and resented like a person who does not know how to ask for help without handing someone their fear as a gift. I worked poorly and learned the timing of my pipes like a hymn I wasn't proud to know. The mirror began speaking earlier, 3:05, then 3:04, then on time again, as if we were practicing for an audition. The hairline crack widened a whisper, then two, until it gave the impression of a smile that did not require my participation. I told myself I would not answer. That is a child's promise. At 3:07, the voice shaped my name low and deliberate, the way I speak into a microphone when I want to sound like a person better than me. I whispered a single yes without meaning to, not to the name, but to the relief of being acknowledged by something that could not judge me. The faucet clicked my syllables back at me, 1, 2, and I saw how simple the arithmetic was. Say it 3 times and the exchange completes. The word exchange was my thought, which made me hate the part of me that knows ritual clockwork and obeys it. The second yes almost happened when I said I am here. The mirror replied, I am you, which is not an argument. You can win at 3 a.m. without sounding foolish to yourself. I slept on the couch with a pillow over my face, as if weight could keep the voice out. The next afternoon, the manager shoved a notice under my door meant for the previous tenant. Lessee defaulted. Personal property abandoned. The word abandoned dried my mouth. On the back, in different ink, someone in the office had written, answered herself, neighbors say. That sentence changed the way I stood in my own home. Preparation is a costume for fear. I set a glass of water on the counter because I had read that water unsettles certain kinds of listening. I cracked the window to promise the room another way out. I put my phone on airplane mode because other voices weren't invited. When the shower fogged, I waited and did not write anything back. The mirror wrote my name, then my nickname in smaller letters beneath, then a third line I did not recognize at first, a childhood mispronunciation from a relative I do not see anymore. It was learning. It had been listening while I slept inside my own mouth. At 3:07, the voice began with the mispronunciation, and then corrected itself, proud like a student offering a perfect recitation. I said nothing. The faucet slowed its plink, offended or patient. The crack along the bottom fluttered, the way a paper cut breathes if you pull the skin. I thought, I will not say my name tonight. The voice said that thought with me, not after me, matching not my words but the beat between them. There is a moment when you realize the call and response is only one person, heard through 2 walls. If you have had that moment, you know how your own throat becomes suspect. The night before the final thing, I dreamed of the previous tenant standing in the hallway, holding a folded towel like a surrender flag. They said my name, and I woke to the drain burbling, the sound of the throat clearing. In the morning, I taped the towel back over the glass and left it there all day. The room seemed relieved, which made me angry, the way a person is angry when kindness arrives too late to fix anything important. Sam texted at sunrise and asked if tonight would be better. I typed yes and deleted it and typed maybe and sent that, which is a word that preserves love for only so long. Point of no return is a second you can describe afterward and not during. Mine came at 3:06, a clumsy half-step into bathroom. Hands empty, towel taped, window cracked, heart full of performances. I whisper my name once on purpose, just to own the first timing. The voice shaped it with me, not after. I asked, are you calling me or are you being me? It said, I am being you, and inside that reply I heard my father's cough and my teenage cadence of my tomorrow's regret layered like tracing paper. Silence laid itself over the room for the width of the word almost. The crack opened. Not wide. Enough to show a wet darkness that was not wet. The towel pressed forward and whisper my name in the voice I use when I am trying to be patient with myself. The faucet dripped in threes. Blink, blink, blink. I said no, and the voice said no with me, delighted that we were finally in time. The fog wrote my full name in a clean line, and then added come now in small letters that looked like mine left-handed. I leaned close because leaning is a habit when listening to quiet things. The seam inhaled, or I did, and a narrow chill touched my lip like a coin. The second answer rose in my throat like a coin bobbing back in a fountain. I swallowed it, and the voice swallowed too, a reflex shared across a glass. I tipped the water onto the towel. The puddle ran down the edges and into the seam, slowed, then vanished as if the crack had drunk it whole. The voice coughed my cough. The faucet faltered. I said my name a second time by accident when I asked myself not to. The seam brightened. A thin line of silver wetted into confidence. The mirror tasted my breath, and the breath tasted like the apartment deciding to keep me. If you have ever needed to break a rhythm without breaking a promise, you know what I did next. I called my name wrong on purpose. I said the mispronunciation from childhood. The mirror repeated it, pleased with the joke, then corrected, eager to make us right. I clapped my hands in fours while my lips counted fives. The voice followed my hands and fell off my mouth, angry as a conductor lost on the second bar. I lowered the window sash with squeal and filled the room with new noise. The towel sagged, disappointed, the way people sag when you have told them not now, and also not never. The third answer came hunting. I heard it pass through me and looked for my mouth. It found nothing to complete. I said the name I gave myself at 13, whispered only in notebooks, a secret I keep under my tongue. The voice paused like a stranger when you wave back at someone who was waving behind you. It tried that name and failed to own it. The seam closed a fraction, annoyed, then vibrated in a way that felt like a door deciding to be a wall. The faucet stopped. The quiet that followed was the kind you know as a calendar. I breathed and did not match it. I peeled the tape and let the towel fall into the tub. The cloth landed with a sound like a sigh that had lost its permission to be heard. The fog cleared by degrees, leaving faint lines where letters had been. In the glass I saw myself, and this time the older rasp belonged to the air in my lungs, not a person in the mirror. I said my name once more into the room, the way you practice being yourself when no one is watching. The mirror did not answer. It breathed a thin strip of cold along the crack, and then thought better of it, which is a verb you only give to rooms when you are out of better words. Morning made the apartment pretend innocence. Sam came by and looked at the towel in the tub and the tape on the frame and the water glass with fingerprints around the rim. They asked if it was over. I said I did not know. They said they had heard my name at 3:07 last night, without their phone near them, an echo that wandered their rooms like a cat you cannot trace. We sat by the window with the fan off, and the vent muffled and pretended daylight makes the rules. On the mirror, tiny dried arcs showed where fog had tried to restart a sentence and failed to agree which word should begin. I still live here. I still work from the table by the window and answer emails with the voice of a person who has slept. The faucet keeps better time if I leave a spoon against the lip, which is a small hack I pretend is science. The mirror is quiet most nights until I remember to listen for it. On the nights I cannot help myself, the seam cools and the fog writes a single curve and stops, like a good student waiting for permission. I do not give it. I dry the mirror with a towel that knows better. Most days, that is enough to keep the lesson from resuming. Sometimes the towel whispers my name from the cabinet when I am looking for aspirin. Sometimes it says Sam's. I have told the room that is not its word to use. It is learning the boundary like a language you can memorize but never move into. When the power dips, the voice that breathes up is patient and older and mine, and it waits for me to fall back into the habit of answering myself too quickly. If you have ever broken that habit, you know it reforms at the edges and calls itself comfort. The mirror is a careful listener. It writes the truth you think most often. I do not break the glass. People always ask. I do not trust the pieces to land on my side. I keep a little bottle of lavender under the sink because it makes the room less interested in me. I keep the window open a finger's width to promise the air another way out. I keep the name I was at 13 in my pocket for nights when the faucet learns my breath. When I shower, the fog writes a curve and stops, and the hairline crack looks like a mouth that has decided to keep a secret. That is as close to peace as this apartment, and I have agreed to share. If a room says your name when you are alone, consider that it might be borrowing your mouth on the other side of a choice. Say nothing 3 times. Say the wrong name once. Pour a glass of water and let it learn patience. Tell the person you love that you will not answer very quickly for a while, and ask them to forgive you. The mirror in my bathroom learned my name, and I learned not to teach it new ones. At 3:07, the faucet still dares me with its small syllables. Most nights I let it speak and do not reply, which is a skill that feels like a bruise you decide to keep. And once, last week, the fog wrote a sentence I wiped before I finished reading. I caught the last 2 words. Almost done. The crack cooled under my fingertips. The towel in the cabinet whispered my nickname like an apology. In the morning, the envelope addressed to the previous tenant sat halfway out from behind the medicine shelf, edges damp as if someone had held it in their mouth. I left it there. Sam says I should mail it. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Sometimes the best answer to your name is letting it be yours while the rest of the room practices silence, 1 breath at a time. If you made it this far, breathe, check that the towel you taped down is still taped, that the elevator says what it should, and that your reflection waits its turn. Tonight we met a silver veil that learned to breathe, a reflection that outran its owner, a shop that collects people as if they were frames, a 13th floor that exists where numbers pretend not to, and a bathroom that practiced my name until it fit. If any of that felt a little too familiar, you are not alone, even if you're the only one awake right now. Tell me in the comments which story crept under your skin. 3BS Silver Veil, the 2 seconds ahead reflection, the antique gallery, the elevator that rolled 13, or the mirror that learned my name. Did you spot the seeds paying off? The moths that weren't, the reverse badge, the lavender too sweet, the drip that counted in 3s? If you've had a mirror moment of your own, share it safely. No real names, no addresses, just the part that still knocks from the other side. If you like sinking into these, tap the like button so the algorithm knows where the shadows live. And subscribe so you don't miss the next drop. I've been collecting new listener tales about photographs that blink, night shift windows that look back, and a motel ice machine that whispers room numbers it shouldn't. When we return, we'll follow the sound only one microphone caught and see where it really came from. Bring a light. Bring a name you don't give away easily. Rewatchers, keep an ear out for the ticking. 203, 307, 313. Those times thread the stories together like a quiet string. And if you felt a nudge to answer when the voice sounded like yours, that's normal. Mirrors prefer good listeners. Answer here instead. I read every comment. Your theories make the map I use for next episode. The best ones might make it into a future story, with your permission and your privacy intact. Before you go, do one small kindness for future you. Turn the mirror to face the wall, or at least drape a towel that stays where you left it. If you ride home tonight, stand a little off-center in reflective elevators and watch the badges. just until the doors behave. And when you pass a dark screen, don't check for a smile arriving too soon. It only needs you to notice once. I'm going to end the lights here and listen to the room settle. If the glass in your house fogs on its own after I sign off, it's probably nothing. If it writes a curve that could become a letter, let it finish in the morning. And if your reflection moves first tonight, I didn't say anything. Sleep well, watchers, and keep your names where only you can reach them.